Chapter 1. The Homemaker's Office of the Baron's Estate. The year was 136 in the Febdechoth, the Febdash calendar. However, each solar revolution at this particular barony was short enough to measure around a third of the cosmic standard. In other words, it was quite young for a nation. And make no mistake, though the citizenry numbered a paltry 50, the Febdash barony was a nation unto itself. While technically a part of the empire, it had accrued its own storied history unperturbed by outside currents or the affairs that swayed the empire's hub. Granted, there was almost no disturbance to speak of that year, and, consequently, nothing to give life there much zest. But now, things were different. Now, a pair of visitors were trying to shatter the peace. One of those visitors, Jinto, noble prince of the Kingdom of Hyde, had been tossed into the same chamber as the former baron, who was also trapped there. "Look over there, boy." The former baron of Febdash pointed at the thick marble door. "That's where they dragged you in from." "What exactly was going on when that happened?" asked Jinto. "I was lost in my meditations. I spend most of the day meditating, with a bottle of booze for company, mind you. Then I hear the door opening. Thing hadn't opened in a good 20 years. For such a momentous occasion, I'd skip my own funeral, so I jumped to check it out, only to see ya on an auto stretcher inching your way inside." "That's it? Me on an auto stretcher? Nobody else?" "Oh yeah, there were 2 servants behind ya, that is to say, out in the hallway. And they were packing heat too. Not that they'd ever be sticking 'em on a former baron, but guns they had. You know, for some reason, I've never been able to relax when I'm around people who are armed. Anyway, as I glued my gaze on your stretcher, it stopped right in front of me. Gave me the heebie-jeebies." Meanwhile, the ladies were dead silent and stood there stock-still. They looked at me like they wanted me to do something, but they didn't bother saying what. Not ones to divulge much, let me tell ya. Could have found work as secret agents. "Then what?" Jinto prodded. "Well, I figured they wanted me to have you and the stretcher part ways, so I whipped up the energy in these old bones of mine and laid you down on the floor. Soon as I did, the thing took its leave, and the door closed. And my dear son's servants stayed frozen and mute the whole time. I'd wager they're still standing there on the other side of the door as we speak. They must positively adore us. So, I was out cold all throughout, huh?" Jinto had to periodically anchor the conversation, or else the old man would take the conversation to some uncharted places no one could predict. "Ya were indeed, boy. I even thought you could be dead. Maybe my offspring's been thinking of just making this place into a mortuary once I died, and he jumped the gun a little with you. That's what was running through my head until I saw you were twitching in your sleep. Then I knew you were alive. And easy to sympathize with, what with those 2 escorting you. Then I whipped my old bones up once again and carried you to bed. I was holding out hope that a spot of rest might change your personality, too. But when you came to, you grabbed me by the collar and started bawling at me for answers, like a cat that'd just nabbed its kitten's kidnappers red-handed." "At no point did I grab you by the collar, nor did I ever bawl at you," Jinto reminded him. "I was just expressing how startled I was, that's all. If you're gonna pick me apart like that, then what was it all for? I whipped up my old bones 2 whole times for ya." "I'm sorry," he said, though in truth he'd have liked it if Sruff acknowledged how relatively calm he'd been under fire. "Wow, boy. Let it be said that the way you swallow everything is your greatest treasure." And, having lauded Jinto so, Sruff proceeded to show him around their zone of confinement. However, unlike the patrol ship Goslotha's interior, there wasn't much of interest to see here, so it took nary a moment to run through it all. They had access to a washroom and bath, a kitchen, and a warehouse-cum-repair room for the automatons, along with 5 other chambers besides. A small garden lay at zone's center, surrounded by various rooms connected to it and to each other by corridors. "I don't see any windows anywhere," murmured Jinto, after crossing into the last of the rooms, the living room. "A window might have served as a means of escape." "Course not," said Sruff. "Even if there was one, we're surrounded by the cultivation ranch, so it wouldn't exactly be breathtaking scenery. Unless you'd enjoy watching the meat grow in the culture tanks, in which case something must have made a deep damn impression on you when you were a wee one." "Oh no, trust me, I have no desire to watch meat grow," gainsaid Jinto. He had to wonder whether Sruff had forgotten all about the escape plan. In the void of space, Windowless is far more practical. Sruff worked some controls in a corner of the room, and the walls reflected imagery of a terrestrial vista. A mountain jutted tall and stately, capped white with snow. The room's vantage point was set to be level with its apex. Drawing nearer to the wall, a viewer could look down upon all the other surrounding peaks. Clouds were rolling around each mountain's foot. Looking up, on the other hand, greeted the viewer with a sky so blue one could almost see it reaching the ends of the galaxy. "Impressive," said Jinto, deciding that it couldn't hurt to humor the former Baron's digression momentarily. "You're impressed by this old thing? What backwater world did you crawl out of?" "No," huffed Jinto, "not the device. The scenery." "Whoops, sorry about that," he said, though without a trace of sincerity in his voice. "Wait a sec, isn't this scene a little unnatural? If the clouds are that far down, that'd place it above the stratosphere. No way the sky would be this blue this high up. You must be of terrestrial upbringing if you notice that. Ovs, they're under all sorts of misconceptions when it comes to that stuff." "Then this is what, art? And of fantasy?" "It's Delbasex, a videographer who worked during Bayak Rokat or pre-imperial history, or PH times, known for realistically reproducing terrestrial landscapes." "You mean the Gok Ramgokot, space roving age?" "Yep. Then I can hardly blame them. For that was the era whereby the Ov plied between each isolated colony, with trade as their livelihood. It was little wonder how their grasp of the natural world might slip away." Delbasex entitled this piece, Gamlaka Tall Mountain. "Bit boring, though." "I'd give it a different name," said Sruff. "I'd call it Bari Painek, Pride of the Ov. Think about it. There ain't nothing else that can express their pride as accurately as this panorama," the old man expounded. "Recognizing your own nobility on a personal level is all you need. No need to go around advertising it, and still less need to be assured of it by others. It doesn't matter how humble your role is in life, as long as your self-regard is higher than anybody else's. High enough to look down on Her Majesty the Empress, even. Get that into your head, and no matter how highfalutin the people you meet, they'll never seem like anything more than extras who are there to set the stage for you." Funnily enough, I heard that whenever an Ov meets somebody who has no pride, they don't know how to handle it. Though I guess that ain't limited to pride. As an Ov, it's about any sort of pride. Suddenly he was roaming around the living room aimlessly. Not that my shameful excuse of an heir seems to understand any of that. He's no tall mountain, no, he won't go near one. He's seen fit, instead, to dig a deep pit by the mountain. Takes solace in being higher than the deepest lows. I may be a lander genetically, but I'm sure as hell more of in spirit than that twit. Jinto once, and only once, had laid eyes on a bear. It was at a Vorlash Koundam Zoo. Jinto was staring at the bear, since at first it had been simply pacing its cage in its discontent, but for reasons only it could ever know, it flew into a rage and flung itself into the tempered glass that separated it from him. Naturally, the only damage sustained was to the beast's claws and fangs, but Jinto would go on to relive that episode occasionally in his nightmares, awakening in a cold sweat. And Sruff was currently more than reminiscent of that bear. Only this time, there was no barrier to protect him. Sorry to bother you, Lanilayam Rika," he addressed him properly. "But I think we should go about crafting an escape plan sometime soon." "Right, of course." Sruff nestled into a couch, looking a tad drained. "Boy, if there's anything you ought to take from this, it's that if you're Ov, you've gotta instill a sense of nobility and pride in your kids before all else. That said, you don't need to tell them that. It's more like a contagion. Just mill around and believe you me, they'll catch it. Unfortunately, that means I ain't got any real pride inside me." I learned what the pride of the Ov entails while fumbling in the dark, and tried to express that idea to him directly. You can see how that turned out. First things first, you've gotta be a noble soul. Embody pride, and it'll pour out naturally in every little thing you do. Then your Galshiak, successors, will learn by example what the meaning is of pride. I'll keep that in mind. He knew it just might be useful advice. If, that is, he had a future ahead of him to begin with. Now then, what say we get to hatching our little scheme? Got any ideas on how we make a break for it? Can these walls be smashed open? Jinto lightly tapped the wall that was still displaying Delbasex's tall mountain. While the former Baron didn't have anyone waiting on him, he was attended by a multitude of automatons. Perhaps it wasn't impossible to knock down a wall using some of them. Even if we could break through one, we oughtn't. We'd face a hell of a time leaving without getting spotted from the ranch. Gotcha. Jinto figured it was a long shot, so he wasn't too devastated. Wait, how do you get your food? From that door, right? No, the former Baron shook his head. Remember the huge fridge in the kitchen? The one built into the wall? Things too layered. Once every 10 days, the boxes inside it travel their dedicated passageway. Then they come back full of fresh grub, toiletries, stuff like that. Could we maybe hide in one of those boxes? Afraid not. They went a restock just yesterday. I don't think we could make them move all that quickly even if we grew extra mouths. Unless you don't mind waiting. It was Jinto's turn to shake his head. We can't set them in motion from here? What do you think? Said Sruff, oddly prideful. I'm being held here. How about we remove the boxes, or I dunno, break them, and follow the passageway? Can't say that idea is a winner, boy. Where the boxes are headed, there's another door on that side, too. Trying to open it from within could wind up snapping our bones. My son's the suspicious type. He's probably on the lookout for any half-eaten frozen shrimp that might escape, let alone us. I wouldn't place my bets on the box route if I were you. Got any better ideas? Oh, I know, Jinto said with a snap of the fingers. What about the trash slot? We could just slip through and... If I recall, there's a thresher installed at some point of the chute. You might be mincemeat by the time you make it to the garbage heap. And it's pretty hard to walk anywhere when you're a pile of gore. Well, if that's robbed you of the will to do anything at all, I wouldn't judge. Ugh, Jinto hung his head. Do you have any ideas? You must have thought about it before, right? About escaping. Course I have. It's perfect for killing time. Everybody and their cousins mulled over those ideas before. That's the only reason I'm able to poke holes in them so quickly. Yeah, I kind of gathered as much, said Jinto, crossing his arms. What's the procedure for emergencies? You mean like me getting sick? I'd probably contact M using the phone and have M come over. Ain't ever happened before, though. You mean we've got a phone? Hope sprung in Jinto's chest, only to retreat once again. Oh, that must be the phone that only connects to the homemaker's office. That's the one. They most likely won't let us talk to Fielartner either. I mostly just use it to complain about the food. Okay, fine, so then one of us fakes being sick, or we cause a fire, or... Gotta say, boy, I was hoping for a lot more from a limber young lad like you. It's no good. It ain't no good, no. No idea why, but I'm as hardy as they come. Never been sick in my life, really. Then I follow right around when you're here? My son has many faults, but he's no fool. It'd raise his guard for sure. What if I do it, though? Pretend I'm frail and prone to sickness. But that's assuming he cares whether you live or die anyhow. When Jinto realized how true that was, he plunged into a very black mood. He probably wishes I'd just bite it already, too, said Sruff, driving the final nail. I guess starting a fire's a dumb idea, too, then. So it is. The former Baron nodded gravely. They were at an impasse, unable to come up with anything else. Jinto thought he'd need a change of pace before the answer could come to him. Jinto bade him adieu and exited out into the hall. He made a revolution walking around the central pond while admiring the flowers. Situated at the pond's very center was a circular islet, narrow enough to squeeze in at most 10 people. A white bridge in the shape of a rainbow spanned the expanse, though it was probably just a model. He peered into the pond, curious whether any creatures dwelled in its depths, but he couldn't spot anything swimming. Alas, no bright ideas bubbled up in his mind, and he soon grew tired of staring at the pond's waters. He turned his gaze up to the ceiling. It was a dome, about 500 dag tall at its highest point, and painted sky blue. Squinting, he could make out a faint line etched in the dome's apex. A circular line. Too like an entrance. Lanilayam Rika, cried Jinto to the old man in the living room. What? He stepped in and stood beside Jinto. What is that? Jinto pointed up at the circle. That pressure door-looking circle, see it? Oh, that. He nodded. That there's the Bodek, round hatch, that leads to the pier. To the pier? But this isn't the spaceport zone. This whole sector was originally a welcoming hall for guests of honor. Used to be an elevator tube on that island and everything, he said, pointing. Now that he'd mentioned it, Jinto saw how the hatch was located exactly above the islet. It was designed to allow visitors to relax upon touching down through contact with some surface world nature. My mother, she loved the whole concept. Thing is, the occasion never came. Nobody ever stopped by. So my sad sack of a son converted the place into my prison. He took down the elevator, leveled half of the hall, and tacked on some new rooms. Is that hatch still operational? You bet it is. And if it's operable manually, then we can open it from the inside. We need to destroy the safety, but that shouldn't be too hard. But what are you cooking up in that hut of yours? Isn't it obvious? He shouted feverishly. That's our way outside. Outside? Outside is space. The vacuum of space. Jinto's silence lasted mere seconds. Then we walk along the mansion's roof until we make it to the connecting vessel. Next, we enter the vessel for a bit and then head back toward the orbital estate. Pity gleamed in the former Baron's eyes. There ain't any Gonoek, pressurized clothing around here. Or have the Ov managed to suffuse all of space with breathable air while I've been stuck here struggling to kill time? Wah, wait, hold on, said Jinto, refusing to give up. They say people can survive for a short amount of time in a vacuum. And do you know where the vessel's parked? Yeah, at the spaceport, of course. Oh. So you see now, said Sruff. The port's a long ways away from here. You could be infused with all of humanity's good luck and stamina, and it'd still be impossible. But what if it's moored someplace close by? Can't rule it out. Jinto clung to his last mad shred of hope for dear life. Let's scout it out and check to see if it's closer than not. Sorry, but that ain't in the cards. The elevator had the airlock room in it. The instant we open that hatch, this zone's air'll leak out. We'll just shut it again. Don't be stupid. Think about the air current that'd produce. It's a manual hatch, so it ain't powered by anything. Closing it again is out of the question. Besides, that idea hinges far too much on blind luck. You can put your own life on the table, but I wouldn't. And you're the one who hates gambling, ain't ya? Uh-huh. Crestfallen, Jinto slumped to the ground at the pond's edge. Despair racked his mind. Would he be forced to play nice with this old man, always to be trapped in the palms of the Baron of Febdash? The former Baron was pleasant enough, but Jinto wasn't about to sign up to share the rest of his life with him. Plus, there was Leifir to think about. Was she all right? If the Baron had any sense to speak of, he'd never lay a finger on a royal princess of the Empire. And yet, would a sane person detain a soldier in the middle of a mission? That's it. The vessel just needs to come to the hatch, Jinto muttered, half to himself. To us. Clearly. That's what the hatch is there for. For boarding. But how'll we get it here? Have you got some mystic powers as yet unraveled by man? Would you shut up and let me think? Jinto snapped. Taken aback himself, he looked up at the former Baron. I'm sorry, I got carried away. It's okay, said the old man calmly. I was being snarky despite my years. I'm sorry, boy. I know this is a pressing crisis to you. That's right. This is important, Jinto concurred. In any case, you ought to forget about the hatch. Got any other ideas? Best not move, said Leifir, brandishing her phaser. This place is now under Star Force's occupation. And there was Selnai, training her own gun right beside her. The homemaker's office was quite spacious. One wall was projecting a vista with the Star of Febdash at the center, while ever-shifting numbers and graphs danced across another. Meanwhile, 3 servants were working 3 rows of consoles. What in the stars? The lady, who seemed to be the supervisor, cast her eyes on the intruders. Fielartner. Along with Selnai. Hands up, Greta, yelled Selnai. What's the meaning of this nonsense? Baffled, Supervisor Greta watched Selnai intently. I am a trainee star pilot of the Imperial Star Forces, Avrielsek ne Dubrisker Bear Parian Lamhair. Yes, I'm well aware, said Greta, visibly flummoxed. The other 2 were wearing the same expression. They glanced at each other, then shot Selnai an inquisitive look, as if to say, what is this farce? Is this the kind of prank Imperials entertain themselves with? How excessive. How deeply unamusing. It was all too clear that the servants here hadn't come to grips with the situation either. Yet Leifir could hardly back down now. Sensing her own resolve to fight was dangerously close to flagging, Leifir rekindled it by declaring, "The Star Forces have hereby seized the Gondor Garrick Erlimecht Fabdakr, homemaker's office of the Feb-Baron's estate. I require all of you to raise your hands and stand up slowly." They did as they were ordered. Leifir advanced incrementally away from the door, her back to the wall. There was no way to know when the Baron would arrive with armed backup. Selnai tightly flanked Leifir with a poise that belied the fact this was her first time holding a weapon. "Your Highness," Filartner, Greta started, "why are you doing this? If you have some task to carry out, surely you could have simply ordered us directly. Then here are my orders. I demand to be allowed contact with the former Baron. Better yet, I demand he and Yarluk Dryor Hader be freed." Greta's face immediately stiffened. "That is prohibited, and I'm afraid that I'm not authorized to grant that request." "In that case, you can see why I needed to take this place by force," Gossasek servants said Leifir. "I enjoin you to forget the Baron's orders and get to it. Now." "Don't move, Kvaspia," shrieked Selnai, firing her phaser out of nowhere. The laser missed its mark completely, hitting the projection of the blazing star of Febdash on the wall like a bullseye instead. "Damn it." The servant named Kvaspia trained the gun she'd drawn from under her console on Selnai. Leifir wasted no time shooting Kvaspia's hand. Yarg! It dropped from her grip. Selnai darted to pick it up off the floor and proffer it to Leifir. The royal princess stole a glance at it and ascertained that it was a paralyzer gun. Leifir signaled Selnai with her eyes, "If there are any other weapons, you'd best ferret them all out." Selnai copied loud and clear and proceeded to separate the ladies from their respective consoles so she could carefully inspect them. "Tell us what's going on, Selnai," said one of them. "You won't believe it, Arsa. The two were friends, and so Selnai happily launched into an explanation. "Do it now," said Leifir, gun still square on Greta. Greta was wide-eyed with disbelief. "You really mean it, don't you, Your Highness? I know not what rumors you may have heard about the Avriel family, but we do not fire at people for fun," she replied. "I understand." A sigh. "I understand, Your Highness. However, I regret to inform you that it isn't possible to open the door to the retirement zone." "Is that true?" "It's no lie. Without my lord's permission, we can't open it, not even from here. Not unless my lord comes here, uses his own Crest key, and enters the sage Samina of his own volition." "And there's absolutely no other way?" pressed Leifir. "I swear it," Greta affirmed. Though Leifir had no recourse to detect whether she was telling the whole truth. "Then what of communicating with them? You can't tell me that's prohibited, too." "You may, by all means." Greta threw up her hands and stepped away from the console. "Please wait a moment while I connect you. No sudden movements, no funny business." "Yes, I know." Slowly, Greta sidled aside and reached for the phone. Unlike most other phones, it was fixed to an otherwise barren wall. It was then the door opened. Leifir flashed the muzzle in its direction. "There you are, Filartner." The Baron barged inside, a handful of armed servants at his call. Peering into the muzzle pointed his way, he froze in place, stupefied. "What excellent timing, Baron," said Leifir. "I was just informed that your Compuach is what we need to free Jinto. I suggest you cooperate." "What are you doing?" "Shield me," he barked at his small contingent. Arms brandished and at the ready, the servants formed a wall between him and Leifir. "You can't be serious," cried Selnai. "You dare point guns at Her Royal Highness." The servants flinched at that remark, wincing for all to see. "Selnai, you traitor." The Baron thrust an accusatory finger at her and opened his mouth as though to issue an order. Leifir promptly stepped in front of her to protect her. "Imperial citizen Fag Dakpek Selnaik is under my guardianship now." Selnai gasped behind her, overjoyed. "I'm so happy, Your Highness." "Damn." The Baron's visage twisted into something less handsome. "Your Highness, I am appalled. Did I not give you the most royal of receptions? And now I'd appreciate being allowed a royal exit. You can have my sincerest gratitude after we've peacefully taken our leave." "I cannot allow that. And I do believe I've told you why." "I believe I told you, Baron. I'm getting out of here, one way or the other. Now bring Jinto to me, and post haste." You must mean Lani Yarluk Dryor Hader, said the Baron, his brows knitted with resentment. I cannot. Why? My father is currently catering to him. Then let me convene with your dear father. That, too, is not to be. And why might that be? That might be due to family matters whose details I feel no obligation to reveal. Not even to a highly insistent royal princess, such as your highness. I have no interest in your family matters. I just want to see Jinto. Leifir's sight, the red dot on the Baron, flew up to his head. If it's a fight you want, most honored Baron, shall we get started? You'd never, he spat. If you kill me, then there'll be no freeing Yarluk Dryor Hader. Freeing him, Baron? So, he is being imprisoned. Fine, I'll tell your highness what you want to hear. I have indeed imprisoned Yarluk Dryor Hader. I admit it. But need I remind you? This is my mansion. You have no right to find fault with the way I run my own house, Fee. Nor any right to harm me. Oh, I can harm you. And I promise you I'll rescue him, even if you make it happen the hard way. Because all I need is to shred this mansion of yours to ribbons. That was no bluff, either. Leifir had never been one to utter anything she had no intention of following through on. The Baron, for his part, could sense the depth of her determination. Voice verging on shrill, he replied, Very well. I too am of noble. I do not yield to intimidation. Do what you will, royal princess. But he was feeling the pressure. His eyes scanned the room. All of the servants, including those guarding him, were in a dither. In their world, a clash between of kind was vanishingly rare. Had the interloper been some normal gentry, they would not have had such cause to waver, but when it came to the bearer of an imperial's titles, they hesitated to so much as point a paralyzer gun her way. Among their number, Selnai alone was in high spirits. Your Highness, it looks like Fagdakpek Arsa will be joining our side, she reported. In exchange for employment by the House of Cryab. Sure. Leifir nodded, eyes never straying from the Baron. I shall accept her on the same terms I accepted you. The Baron stamped his feet. This is a flagrant violation of all that is decent. You're all traitors, every last one of you. Is your little tantrum over now, Baron? Leifir trigger finger tensed. I expect you to open the door to the retirement zone, or the prison zone, or what have you, before the count of 3. I refuse. And with that, he turned tail. Leifir hesitated and lost her chance to shoot. That moment was all it took for him to flee. The rest of his guard followed after him, and soon they were all gone. Wait. Selnai made to give chase. It's okay, Selnai, said Leifir, stopping her. If she had made good on her promise to shoot him, the servants defending him would hardly have remained so docile. They would definitely have thrown themselves into battle to protect their lord. With only 2 phasers to their many, their prospects for victory had been hazy. Yes, your highness. What do we do now? What do you two plan to do? Leifir sized up the pair who had yet to plant their flag. Greta faltered in her response. My duty is to protect this place, so, as long as my lord is absent, I can and shall accede to your highness's orders. Well, count me out, said Kvaspia, cradling her own injured hand. I'm a servant of the honorable Baron and always will be. Makes sense. You were always one of his favorites, said Arsa. That barb was almost dripping with years of pent-up resentment. Why don't you run right off to your beloved Baron, then? Selnai jeered. That's enough, Gossasuk ran. Leifir stared and Kvaspia and stated, You need medical attention, so leave us. Kvaspia stood up and, with still defiant eyes, gave her a bow. Your highness's comportment is beyond the pale. To me, your lord's actions were well beyond it. Done with her, Leifir shooed her away. Kvaspia tucked in her chin with irritation and exited the room. Now if you would carry out your orders, Leifir addressed Greta. And tell me, do you know where the Baron went? I'll run a search, your highness, said Arsa, who begun working her console's controls. Your highness, they're on the line, said Greta, handing her the phone, an audio-only model. Is this the former Baron of Febdash? Asked Leifir. But it was not Sruff's voice that greeted her. That you, Leifir? Jinto. Leifir shocked even herself with her near squeal. Are you okay? Yeah, I guess I'm fine. How are things on your end? I'm all right. But never mind that, you need to be on guard. The Baron might be headed toward you. The Baron? To do what? Leifir couldn't be sure whether he was just that dense, or whether he was the type to take things so calmly that it circled right back around to candidacy for natural selection, but she decided she'd interpret that reply in the more flattering way. I admire your unflappability, Jinto, but most likely to kill you. Boy, you really, really suck at lightening a guy's mood. What do we do? We haven't got any weapons. Is there no means of escape? We're at a loss. I surmised as much. Thanks for the vote of confidence. But we can make it out of here with your help. Hate to ask, but could you take a connecting vessel over here? If you could do that for us, then things might just go our way. Where do I take it? Right above us. There's a pier up there. Leifir had to stop herself from diving into a series of questions. Your Highness, interrupted Arsa. I've pinpointed Lanyulayum. He's at the Chikrblyskar flight control room. Did you hear that, Jinto? It seems the Baron hasn't the time to murder you at the moment. He never makes any time for me, said Jinto, sighing with relief. Suddenly, the walls went dark. Half of the numerals and diagrams gambling across them disappeared. What happened? Asked Leifir. At first, Arsa didn't answer, her fingers dancing furiously across the console. Finally, she lifted her head. The functionalities this room shares with the flight control room have been taken over by them, Fee. But it'll all be okay. I closed off part of the input of the computing crystal network. That means we should be able to maintain our present conditions despite Lanyulayum's directives. Which functionalities did they take over? Remote management of the antimatter fuel factory and the fuel storage asteroid, monitoring of intrasystem floating bodies, intrasystem communications, that sort of thing. Can we control takeoff from the pier? Arsa was loath to tell her, I'm sorry, but that's always been restricted to the flight control room. No matter. We'll manage. Military vessels were equipped with the ability to lift off without flight control's aid. I'm going to the connecting vessel. Yes, please leave everything here to us, replied Selnai. Incidentally, Kvaspia's was the only weapon in the office. Why were those servants carrying weapons to begin with? They're the Baron's favorites. And by favorites, I mean, Selnai didn't hide her disgust. His lovers. They're the only ones with the right to bear arms. And that's not the only privilege they enjoy either, like how during mealtimes they're all oh. Yes, quite. Leifir interrupted Selnai's impending diatribes. Every second was of the essence. Holding the phone back up, she said, Jinto, I'm leaving now. I'll be waiting, he said, his words full of a puppy-like trust in her. Leifir hung up. They'd continue their chat later. Fee Lartner, I've opened up all the doors leading to the landing lot, said Arsa, thus making her conscientiousness known, and in short order at that. You have my thanks, she nodded to Arsa. Then, facing Greta, I'd like to speak to Jinto from inside the vessel. Is the phone connected to the general line? I don't think so, Greta tilted her head. If I recall correctly, the way it's constructed makes it independent from the general line. As such, I can only assume it'd be impossible without some work done. Albeit, that work wouldn't be particularly difficult, but still. Is there another way? They had no time to waste doing construction work. You could just take the phone to the retirement zone, suggested Arsa. Do you think you could do that? Selnai clapped her hands together. The Chikkersporhat Mata, second service pantry. What? There's a food transport passageway that runs from the second service pantry to Lanyulayum Rika's retirement zone, she explained. We could use it to deliver the phone to them. I'm not in charge of the area, but I have done some menial labor there, so I know the kitchen. So, it can be done, said Leifir, double-checking. Yes, Selnai nodded. Are there any extra phones? Yes, if you don't mind using my CompuWatch, Your Highness, offered Selnai. You don't mind. Heavens me, of course not. Regardless of what may happen to me, I would sacrifice anything for Your Highness, let alone 1 or 2 CompuWatches. Thank you, she said, plugging Selnai's zealous outpouring. Your CompuWatch's number, if you would. She registered Selnai's number into her own CompuWatch. Okay, allow me to head to the service pantry. With Arsa's special skills, she should man the office, said Selnai, apparently forgetting all about Greta. She was now clutching to her chest the device that moments before had adorned her wrist, as it was now her treasure. Be careful. But Leifir immediately regretted saying that. There was a 100% chance it would trigger a torrent of overblown emotion in her. And sure enough. Oh, Fielartner, what an absolute honor. Predictably, Selnai seemed likely to collapse into a puddle of tears on the spot. I wonder what Jinto does whenever this happens, Leifir thought to herself idly. No, this was no time for idle contemplation. I'm leaving. Good luck. Your Highness, wait. Selnai dialed back her own storm of weeping and rushed over to her. Please take this. Lonnie Arluk Dryor will be needing a weapon too. Leifir's eyes fell on the phaser she was being handed. But what about your own defense? Surely you need a weapon yourself. I have the one Kvaspia dropped, she said, indicating the paralyzer gun. Understood. Leifir took it, holstered it in her sash belt, and dashed out of the homemaker's office.